luckily we came along because he would have lost the whole thing. He was still now able to sell it. So definitely a win-win for both of us coming together.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, excited to have Grant Warrington. Grant, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Todd. I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Excited to talk, man. It's been a while since we've chatted, so I want to dive in. Want to learn more about what you're doing today. So why don't you, speaking of that, why don't you give our listeners a bit about your background and what you're doing?
My background. All right, I'm going to try and make it quick. Construction worker is how I started out. Had a lot of problems to go through with my personal life, deal with. I got into buying single family rentals in 2001. I went bankrupt because I had a bad drinking problem and I had no education. Quit drinking in 2011. 2015, met my wife. We started buying properties again. Realized that was the way to go. Fast forward a couple of years, we realized, one, I hate my boss. I hate having a boss, not my boss, just the idea of it. So we decided we want to quit our jobs, but we knew that single family homes wasn't going to take us to where we needed to be. So we pivoted and went to small multifamily apartments. And that's what changed our lives. And we're at 41 units today. We self-manage and haven't had a boss for a few years now, which is fantastic. But that's where we're at, 41 self-manage. And, that's about it, I think.
When you say small multifamily, like what's that size?
Tell you the truth, it was anything we could get our hands on, to tell you the truth. We're at we kept our duplex. We sold all our single families in a 1031. Okay. And so we have a duplex. It's a side-by-side townhome style. We kept that, but our smallest building's an 8-unit. The next unit's an 11-unit. And then the first purchase we ever made was a 20-unit apartment building. So those are small multifamilies is what I call them.
Got it. So eight kind of that 8 to 20 kind of unit range. Okay. Correct. So what attracted you to those versus, obviously there's a lot of different food groups in multifamily and real estate in general, right? But what attracted you particularly to the, kind of that 8 to 20 unit type range?
It was, in 2017, we made the decision we're going to syndicate going forward. We are just going, that was going to be our path. And what happened was we educated ourselves on apartments. And I was in the basement of one of our single families with the inspector for the city. And I said, I started telling everybody we're buying apartments. And I told him we're buying apartments. He said, call this woman in my city. She owns a bunch of stuff. And talk to her. So I'm like, okay. And I called her and she said, I'm not selling anything, but here's 4 people you can call. They all do a shitty job running their properties. And I'm like, all right. So she gave me these 4 leads. I talked to every single one of them. Turns out I knew one of them. The guy owned a liquor store in my town. And I went in and I said, hey, will you ever think about selling your apartment? At first, I didn't even know you owned it, but do you ever think about selling it? And he said, yeah, I think I'd sell it. And I was like, holy shit. Okay. So that's how we started. And that's a long story, how we got to that. It was seller financing, a lot of different things on that. But then we were like, okay, we're in this game, right? We're in the small apartment game. And that we kind of backed away from syndication at that point and thought, you know what, we'll do this. And all throughout the path, we've always pivoted and said, we're going to syndicate again and, buy larger stuff. But we just kept getting fed these smaller deals and they just made sense. So that's really how we got into the space and where we've been at.
So seller financing, how did you work the seller finance, or was it just something that like the guy was like, hey, I'll sell seller finance, or how did that work?
Well, the building was a mess. We bought it for $625,000 we closed January.
And that was the 20 unit. Is that right? You said
that was
the first
20 unit.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's in my hometown. It's a nice area. The building was just atrocious. It was horrible. Hasn't been touched since 1965. Horsehair carpeting, red carpeting, horsehair padding. It was terrible. There was a note on the mailboxes: you must pay your rent because the city will turn the water off. I mean, there was leaks everywhere, 55-gallon buckets under water leaks in the basements, instead of repairing them. It was really bad. So 625, we got it for that 20 unit. And,
we just like the bank's not going to be able to finance this.
And we're brand new. This is our first building.
Yeah.
We knew it. And we thought, you know what? And here's the truth. We didn't have a lot of money. I was a construction worker. We did this with very little money. I tell people, like, if this hadn't have been her dream, we'd have been divorced. She'd have left me because, like, all her friends have, live on the lake, have all these great jobs and all these other things. And we were broke, man, doing this. And, it was tough. So we thought, okay, we have this much money. We'll make it work, but we need that down payment. And we need it to be as low as possible. He wouldn't budge on 20% down. So I said, all right, I'll tell you what, though, I need a 30-year AM. And he's like, well, that's fine. I'll give you a 30-year AM. So that lowered our payments. And then we just went from there, and we just tried to work it out with him. Okay. I'd say 5-year balloon. And he's like, no. My dad's older. We need that money sooner. And I said, okay, 24 months. And that's just how we went back and forth. I said 5% interest rate. He said, yeah, that's fine. And that's how we came up with the terms. We signed all the agreements in his liquor store, which was pretty crazy. Excuse me, the LOI and the PSA, the purchase and sale agreement, in his liquor store. And it was crazy. I mean, that's such a long story, though. He actually had lost it to the bank. We did the title work on it. He lost it for back taxes. He had 14 days to get it back and pay $50,000. He didn't believe us. My wife called him, was like, look, you only have 14 days. You're going to lose this thing. Finally, he went, oh my gosh, you're right. Paid the 50 grand, got it back.
He didn't know he was going to lose it?
He didn't know. No, not at all. He just ignored all of it. So you can imagine the state of this building.
Yeah.
It was horrendous. He didn't know. So luckily we came along, because he would have lost the whole thing. He was still now able to sell it. So definitely a win-win for both of us coming together.
Yeah.
And
you were okay with this because you're a construction worker. You're like, hey, I can take, or what? Like, what made you go, this is a great first deal for me to take down? Because this thing is like, I'm like picturing this building that's got, cockroaches everywhere and just like completely run down disaster. It's got the like the towels hanging out the windows and
100%. And the only reason we knew was because it was in our backyard, and we live in the city.
Really?
So we're like, dude, I grew up here. I know this city. I know that this building can be nice. Average rents were $490. We projected $650. We're like, it could be $650. And no one was paying it.
And this is Detroit area.
It's not. It's the Detroit area. Right. It's south of Detroit. So it's not Detroit. We don't invest in Detroit.
Just wanted to give people context when they're like, where the heck is this for? Like, is this San Diego? Like,
exactly. Yeah, no. So, but what we did do is we walked away from him, because we said, listen, we don't want to do that 20% down payment. We didn't really have the money. And he's like, no, that's it. That's what I need. Cause he had to pay, he had people he had to pay as well. So he's like, I need that 120. So we waited a year originally. After our first initial contact, we waited a year. We gave up on it. We're like, you know what, forget it. And then my wife and I, after a year, had a discussion, and we're like, you know what, if not this, then what? Where is this perfect deal that's going to hit us that needs no repairs? It's going to be dirt cheap, and we can get into it for, a little bit of money. It's not out there. So we said, you know what? Screw it. We're going to take a gamble. We're going to do it. We believe in it. We know we can raise rents. We looked at all the other comps, all the other buildings in the area. We knew we could improve it. And my wife actually went and secret shopped like 5 different apartment buildings in the area. So we're like, you know what? We're all in. And that's when we did it. And that's when we took the leap. So in the beginning, we weren't convinced. It took a little while.
Yeah. And secret shopping is huge. We do that, especially when we're not super familiar with the area. But even if we are, we're secret shopping at several properties to kind of make sure you're just going in and you're pretending like you're a tenant. You're sending somebody in if it's not you, and making sure that you understand what's going on in the area. That's so valuable. And it's not only valuable to validate your rent comps, but it's super valuable also to validate the type of renovations that you need to do, because 100%. A lot of times you're like, hey, we got to go to this level. And then you go to the rent comps, and you're like, whoa, we actually don't have to put in granite countertops. No, we don't have to do stainless steel appliances. No, we don't have to, rip out all the bathroom surrounds and do beautiful tile. Like, oh, we can go to this level and still get these rents. Great. Like, and we've done that several times where it's like, and actually we've done it a couple times. We did one where we secret shopped a property. We were planning on buying our property, renovating it, and then we secret shopped several other properties. We're like, whoa, we can get these rents if we go to this level of renovation. Yeah. So we're going to just rip and gut these things and completely blow. So our renovation budget went from like 10 grand a unit to like 25 grand a unit.
Yeah.
Because we could like explode the rents. We knew that by looking at it. So secret shopping is so valuable. Okay. So you got this deal, and then any fun stories with it? Any,
well, just one quick thing on that secret shopping was great though, too, because we had come from podcasts and reading books and learning online, right? It's a whole nother ballgame when you buy a building. And that's what, so we're like, we're going to put washers and dryers in units. We're going to put dishwashers in units. We're going to put granite countertops, just like you said. Right. And then we started looking around at the competition. We're like, we don't need to do any of that. And then you start running numbers on that shit. And you're like, dude, there's no way we could run water lines and put washers and all these different things. So that was huge for us. Just getting it. And that's why I make the videos online that I do, because it's like, it's all this shit we had to learn on our own, because there wasn't people telling you that in the beginning, like you're telling people, right? Like, look at the finishes on these products, right? People were saying, oh man, we put washers and dryers in, we do this, we do that. And I thought, okay, that's what I need to do. And it's wrong. They were also telling people it's a $4,000 rehab. And so I got into it thinking, okay, well, it's probably $4,000 to rehab a unit. Man, they were wrong, right? So that's why I like to tell people, like, no, we're paying 10 grand. Here's my actual numbers of what we're doing and how much we're spending. So that was important. And that's kind of what fueled me. You know what I mean? Is putting videos out there and just educating people on it, like you're doing as well.
Yeah. It's funny. You're right. You hear all that. And I go, who can renovate an apartment building for $4,000 or $6,000? Like, I don't know. You're not doing much for that price. You're certainly, maybe $4,000, you got some flooring and paint, and that's about it, but man, you're not doing cabinets, countertops, appliances, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures. Like, that's not done for $4,000. That's 10, 12, 15 grand. But and like you said, though, you do hear over and over, and quite frankly, I'm probably guilty of it too. I talk about some of the stuff we're doing. Hey, we're putting in washer dryers. Hey, we're doing this and this and this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you do. You have to look at each property. You have to look at the competition and what's going on in that area. And you could be a little bit above your competition, possibly in the finishes, but you want to be careful how much above that competition you go. If you put in washer dryers, that's great. That's going to provide more value. That's probably going to mean that more residents are going to come to your property. It's probably going to be full. They might pay a little higher rent, but how much higher? Right? Are they willing to pay that extra $150 that you need to put those washer dryers in? Maybe not, but that's your job to validate that. Like, does that make sense? Just because some guy or gal told you on a podcast that that's what you should do doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. I love it. So tell me about keys to succeeding. I want to know, so you're buying these small apartments, and small apartments can be challenging, just like large apartments, just like single family, but everything's got their own challenges to it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the keys to your success in these small apartments? They're mostly owned by mom and pa's, and
100%.
so most people have one, maybe two.
Yeah. And what one of our keys to success is tenant base. We learned very quickly that your tenant base can kill you. And whenever we take over a building, like you have to imagine that building we took over, that 20 unit, it was in such bad shape. Like, I'm not going to live there. So who's going to live in a building like that where you're getting threatened, the water's going to get shut off, no repairs are made, right? It's a tenant base that can only afford to live in that building. When the other rents are at $650, $700 in that area, and you're paying $490 in the neighborhood I live in, it's a rough tenant base. And that was one of the problems we ran into, because again, we self-manage. So if you're going to self-manage, you need to understand that your tenant base can kill you. Don't let it. The other thing, you need to change that tenant base as quickly as possible. And that was one of the things. We've had plenty of arguments where we don't argue. I just tell people, look, because anytime we buy a building, they're usually on month to month. And I tell them, I don't want you to be miserable. You can leave, and I can also make you leave. And they say, well, don't threaten me. I say, I'm not. Those are the rules. And that's what I'm letting you know, your options. You can go, and I can also make you go. And we're just very upfront, and people will push you because they think that we're coming into their home, their building. They've been there longer. We hear that a lot. And you just need to have rules in place. And you just, we had a situation today just before this podcast. My wife called me, and I don't know how much I want to get into it, but there was a guy that wasn't a tenant visiting his mother, and he was saying some very, very bad things to my wife. And we called the police, right? Get the police involved, let them deal with it. We've had vandals. And the great thing was, we have a network a network of apartment investors that we network with. And, I reached out to him like this. It's a young kid, and he's killing us. He's vandalizing our stuff. This is a separate story. And they're like, call the police. You need to get the police involved. Yeah. So that's what I suggest to people, but you need to surround yourself with other people that are doing this, so you can pick their brain when these problems do arise. But be prepared and just understand it's the nature of the game. Don't let it knock you out of the game, right? If you're going to self-manage. And if you don't need to self-manage, don't do it.
Yeah, you got to have thick skin. If you're going to self-manage, you have to have thick skin. But I think what you said earlier is so valuable, so important. Whether you're self-managing or not, you need to make sure your management company, or you, if you're self-managing, understands that you have to have rules, and you stick to those rules. And if you're allowing your residents to create the rules or to break the rules, it just doesn't work, right? It just doesn't 100%. Work ever. And I have managed my own properties, and every time you give, and I'm all for being super fair. I'm all for respecting my residents. And I just put it out on a video yesterday. It's like a lot of owners, a lot of landlords, they're like, oh, it's just a rental. They have that kind of mentality. And I don't believe in that. But at the same time, you have to, if you treat your residents with respect, they're going to treat you back. And if they're not willing to do that, if they're not willing to follow the simple rules that you put in place, you can't bend for that. Paying rent,
100%. Not
causing crime or problems. Like, those are basic things, especially if you're talking a 20-unit building, 8-unit building. Yeah. You've got other people that are affected by this. So why, if you are not willing to call the cops on somebody that's causing problems, then why are you're treating the other residents with disrespect?
Correct. Yep. Right. And they deserve that. They deserve you to have those rules, for you to have those and enforce those rules in place, because that's why they live there. The good tenants, because there are rules, and that's 100%. And right now, and I just want to say, I mean, we have a great tenant base now. The gentleman today, he's not a resident, but we've rehabbed 35 units in 4 years. So we've done a lot of work. And that's my wife and I. No full-time, we don't do the work ourselves. We hire contractors, but we've turned just about every single unit. So we have brand new people in place, and it's now we got some really nice buildings with some fantastic tenants.
Love it. Love it. Why self-manage? Why haven't you hired that out? And what I guess, why self-manage, and what do you like about it? Maybe we can talk about some pain points too, but.
What I like about it is, obviously we do a better job than anybody could. Any property management company, a good management company is going to tell you, look, it's your baby. You guys are there every day. You're going to do a better job. It's just,
as long as you're not like the liquor store guy.
That's a great point. Yeah. So, that's what I love about it. We can do a really good job. We're really hands-on. My wife's there every day. The reason we did it was because in the beginning, we didn't have a lot of money. So we didn't want to give that away, the management piece of it.
Yep.
The cash flow, right? So we didn't want to give that away. So we said, well, we can do it ourselves. And that just has slowly progressed. And it's, my last W-2, I managed over 800 units, for a property management company. I was a director of operations. So it was like, it wasn't incredibly difficult for us, but it wears on you. And that's why I tell people, if you have the money and no time, hire management. Because now the fact too is, when you look back, it's like, if we would have hired management on that first single family house and just got used to, when we had W-2s and got used to that little just a small reduction in the income, over time, we would have been used to having a property management company. And who knows, maybe we could have grown quicker. We wouldn't have been so focused on management, right? We'd have been more focused on growth. So, hindsight's 2020, but looking back, it's like, well, maybe we made a mistake doing that. I don't know, but one thing we do know, we've done it long enough to know that it is something we are getting out of now. So we won't be self-managing going forward.
Are you going to take the properties you currently are holding and bring in third-party management, or are you going to just, as anything you newly acquire, bring in third-party, or both?
So here's the truth with that. And I'm always honest, and I like to tell people numbers too. So like, if we bring out, my wife and I both don't have jobs. We do this full time, right? So my wife and I now are financially free, which is great. But when you're financially free off your rentals, you're here, right? You start increasing your expenses, we're right back to square one if our expenses go up. So that's one thing people need to be aware of with financial freedom. Don't be so stuck on that, right? Like, but the thing is, if we brought in third-party management, that's going to take $30,000 to $40,000 just in management a year for our properties. That's a big hit when we don't have any other income coming in. So my wife and I, now we cash flow, we take owner draws, and those are tax-free. Talk to a CPA about that. And it's $10,000 a month. So, and then there's money left over at the end of the year. We're very conservative with what we take out of our portfolio. And, when you start knocking 30 to 40 grand off that number, that's a big hit. So what we're doing is we're moving to Florida, and we've hired someone that's going to be our boots on the ground. And she is going to manage the properties for us. And my wife's going to manage remotely. So when we need somebody to go to that property, we're going to pay her. It's a part-time gig. And then we already have all the maintenance, the plumbers, the electricians, the HVAC. We already have all those people that we deal with. Yeah. So my wife's just going to manage them remotely and have her go to the properties, as need be.
So instead of spending that, whatever, 40 grand, you're probably spending, an extra 10 or something like that, 10, 15, correct, whatever it ends up being, but it's going to be a lot less than the property management company for sure. Correct. No, that's a good way probably to do it. So Florida, so you're moving to Florida.
Yeah.
And you're going to start, are you going to start buying in Florida then?
Yeah, we're going to hold on. Like I said, our properties in the Detroit area, they're all right in my backyard. That was the other reason for self-managing. Our farthest property is 8 minutes away.
Yeah.
But
I think that's a super valuable thing when you're buying small multifamily properties. The big disadvantage of smaller multifamily is that they're usually spread out all over the city. And so you can't have a full-time maintenance person there. You can't have a full-time leasing person there. So you're bouncing all over the city to get to your properties, or potentially even, a lot of people are buying them in different cities and all over the place. And so, if you got something 2 hours away, it's like, geez, this stupid 10-unit building 2 hours away, I got to go run over there. What a pain. But if you're buying them in a 8-mile radius
Yeah.
or less. Man, that's a great thing that helps a lot of that scale kind of inefficiency. Helps create a lot more efficiency by buying it so tight.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And that's what I always tell people as well too. Look for an area wherever it is, an area, if you're going to be buying small multis, and just focus on that area and try and do as much as you can in that smaller area.
Yeah.
But we're going to be probably selling these in a few years, and transitioning down to Florida. And I'm sure we'll be JVing. We'll be, looking at small multis, JVing on, 60 units, syndicating, buying things ourselves personally. So we like you said, there's like an array of different things you can do in multifamily. So we've already syndicated a deal this summer. So just kind of wherever we can fit in and bring the most value to ourselves, our investors, our friends, whatever we can do, that's kind of what we're going to fit.
How was the first syndication? How'd that go?
It went great. The raise, we played a small part. We raised capital, and we're also part of the asset management team. So
Gotcha.
I'm on calls, every week, with the property manager.
So you did a JV partner with some other people.
No. This was full syndication. It was
Sorry,
we're on the GP side.
You were on the GP side, but you joint ventured with them, right? You ventured, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes. So, and again, we played a small role. Some of the guys, one of the guys is, he's in GoBundance as well. It's same as you and me. He has like, 5,000 units, assets under management. So these are guys doing big things. So it was cool to get involved with that. One of the things when we took over, it was, vacancy we had to deal with. Vacancy dropped, a lot of lease terms came up. So, we handled that really well. So people quit at the property, typical things that happen, but we kind of baked that into our underwriting that, we're going to go through some problems initially. So we were kind of aware that we're going to have to, handle some of these things.
Yeah. That's usually a big problem is like, people quit. And tenants leave a lot of times when you take over property. So you have to understand that like you're going to have higher vacancy, even if it's, 95% occupied, that's going to, now bigger apartments, it maybe it's not going to affect you as much, but a lot of times on that, especially where you're talking like an 8 to 20 unit building, new sheriff in town, sometimes that doesn't go over so well with the tenants and they're out. And so I've taken over quite a few of those buildings where all of a sudden it's like, I lose like 4 tenants. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So, and then like you said, the staff, a lot of times was like, they're going to leave, especially because it's just a different environment.
Yep.
If you're buying something that's maybe a little bit more distressed, owner doesn't care as much.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you come in, you care, you've got rules. They just don't like that. So,
correct.
All right. So I want to know, a mistake that you've made and how have you learned from it?
I think I've built my, there's been so many of them, but I think one of the things I've done, and I've always built out of scarcity, not scarcity, but, like feeling like I'm never doing anything. So I would always say like in the beginning, if I could just get one house, I'll be happy. And then I'd get a house. Well, then we switched to apartment. If I could get one apartment building, then I'll be happy. And then we buy a building. And guess what? I wasn't happy. I never looked at it as gratitude, right? I never was grateful for what I had accomplished, where I was at, and where God had put me in life, right? I was always, well, now one more will make me happy. One more will make me happy. And The Gap and the Gain is a great book. And that focused me to look at where I was at compared to where I started and not look at where I thought I needed to be or look at myself compared to other people, right? Other people's chapter 15 and I'm on my chapter 3. Like when I compare myself with someone that's been doing this for 15 years and I've been doing it for 8, how is that a fair comparison? So that was one thing I could have done better and not been miserable the whole time, because I always want one more and then we'll be happy and then we'll make money and then things will get better. And then, and I think that's one thing I would have changed. Just be grateful where I was at.
Yeah, you're also seeing people's social media feeds.
Yeah.
You're hearing people's stories, but you don't really know. You're not really peering into
Yeah.
their financials in most cases. Like, are you really looking at their bank statements? Have you really, do you really understand what's happening there?
Yeah.
And are they successful and are they happy? Like, that's the other question we never really ask. We just see and we're like, oh man,
$100%.
I should be there.
Yeah. And that's
Where do
why
you think that came? Where do you think that came from? That, like, hey, man, I got to buy a house. I got to buy an apartment. Then I'll be happy. Where do you think that came from?
for me, I just thought, personally, probably I would just think that then we'd be making more money. Cause like I said, 35 units in 4 years, like our money was gone. It was cash flow. We were rehabbing out of cash flow, every single thing. So when I say we were broke, I mean, our expenses were like 50 grand a year. That's for our house, health insurance, 2 vehicles, food we eat, everything we do, phones, it was 50 grand. So it was tight. Um, but I think I always thought once we get the next building, things will get better. And, things do get better in real estate. Things get better over time. But the one thing I like to tell people now too is I'm the guy that's going to tell you this on the internet and you're not going to want to hear it, but don't quit your job. Everybody else tells you quit your job. I say, don't quit your job, supercharge your investing. So that means cut your expenses, take all that extra cash you can and invest it into real estate. And you'll be much farther along than quitting your job like we did. Maybe we quit too soon, right? But I tell people supercharge that investing, man. Go all in. Love that job. Let that job be what fuels your future. So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree more with that. Well, there's maybe some exceptions to that rule, but I think for the most part, that's spot on. I mean, yeah, if you maybe have a windfall that comes in, or, for you're really young and you've got some inheritance or something like that, but let that job supercharge you until you get to a point where you just don't need it anymore.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
I agree. What's going on moving forward here? So you're moving to Florida. Next steps, like what do you focus on today?
So today, and this is just another thing. I really like Ryan Pineda. I don't know if you follow him at all. And I called him and I said, hey man, how much can I pay you to talk to you for an hour of your time? And he's like, I don't do that, but you golf with me for $5,000. And I'm like, oh shit. So he called me out and I'm like, all right, he lives in Vegas. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I flew out to Vegas and because my social media, I'm Bigger Pockets. I'm a contributor at Bigger Pockets now with my social media. Things are starting to take off with my social media. And I'm like, I need to talk to somebody about this. I have no mentor in that space.
Yeah.
So I went out there to talk to Ryan about this. And, he asked, what do you do? What's your income? What are you doing? And he's like, look, your horizontal income, right, is $10,000 a month. And he's like, you're not going to fly private. You're not going to, live in a house on the beach. You and your wife aren't going to drive brand new Mercedes at that level, right? Because then you're going to be broke again.
Yeah.
So he's like, you need your vertical income, which would be W-2 income, which I don't have anymore. And he's like, you want a wholesaler flip? I said, no, absolutely not. It's not what I want to do. He said, all right, well, what are your other options? And I said, well, I've been thinking about helping other people buy small apartments. I told him there's no one in that space. There's let's teach you how to buy a single family home. And then there's let's teach you how to syndicate. And there's nothing in between. And I know small apartments. So, I talked to him. I thought, I'm thinking of doing this and building a course and trying to help people with that. And he said, okay, let me ask you this. Your content, you make reels and you these 30-second clips for social media. Can that change people's lives if they watch every single one of your clips? I said, no. He said, can they do exactly what you've done and have all your knowledge if they watch all your videos? And I said, no, not really. He said, then you owe it to people to build that course. He said, the products he has, he's like, listen, I changed people's lives with those. So he said, you owe it to people. You owe it to yourself when you started out to build this course and to people like that need it. And I thought, well, what if I'm not big enough on social media yet? And he's like, well, what are you going to wait for? That's fear. That's fear. You'll never be big enough if that's what you wait for. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. And that was my push to do it. And that's what I'm working on. That's right there, the apartment buying blueprint. And it's a course that teaches people exactly how we went from point A, single family rentals, when we realized that single family rentals suck, and how we went to point B is owning small apartments. I still remember when my wife said, we're going to have to own 50 or 100 single family homes, depending on how much they cash flow, to cash flow $10,000 a month. If they cash flow 200, we'd have to own 50, and we had debt on everything. That's how we grew. And I go, 50, we had 11 units at that point. And I'm like, there's no way I can find, what is that? 39. There's no way I can find 39 more single family homes, rehab them, put tenants in place, and self-manage them. I'm like, there's just no way I can do it. So we made that pivot, and now we have 4 properties for a total of 41 units. So that's what I'm working on today, those helping people make that transition as well.
That's cool. I think it's a perfect thing, especially like you said, this is what you do. You've done it. Yeah. You've been there. You're not out there teaching from a point of, I guess, no knowledge, which some people are, or very little knowledge. And you've been in the trenches, you've self-managed. So I think that's really cool as well. Like it's not like you've hired third parties and are just kind of, seeing it. You've been in the trenches. You've dug the holes.
And that's what I tell people too. I'm like, I'm the guy that teaches inside the apartment building. I'm not the guy that stands on the sidewalk and points at it and says, I own that. Right. Like I'm in there going, here's the shit we had to fix, and here's how much it costs, and here's who we hired to do it, and here's the problem we found, and here's what you're going to come across when this happens to you. What's awesome. The difference between click, plank, LVP and glue down? Which one's better? Which one should you use? How much do they cost? What's it cost to LVP a 1,000 square foot apartment? Right. Those are all the things that I didn't know, and I had to try to figure out what kind of wall color, what's the wall color you use. Who should you use for flooring? We use Sherwin-Williams. They're one of the largest flooring distributors in the United States. Yep. They install our floors, right? But these are things but these are things that most people have to try to figure out as they go. And I'm like, you know what? I can make this a lot easier. I'll just make some videos about all the shit we've gone through and put them out there. And at first I just started doing it for me, but then I'm like, all right, this is actually, people are digging it, and people it's helpful. So that was pretty cool.
So is it a course that somebody can just buy and self-teach videos and that type of stuff? Or is it a coaching mentorship program, or do you do both?
It's an online course, and you can, it's apartmentbuyingblueprint.com, and you go through all the modules, and it's videos about me in the apartment, things I do, how I find off-market properties, how I found two of our buildings were off market, how we did a 1031, everything and anything you can imagine. I touch on repairs. I touch on self-management. If you're going to self-manage, if you're going to hire a property management company, here's the 10 questions you need to ask them. Just anything and everything that I've gone through, I packed that into like over 50 videos.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And just teaching people. And I also plug people into my private Facebook group that if you buy that course, you're in that group, and it's only for people that have bought the course. So I answer questions in there. I go over things. I can be a little more upfront. Sometimes there's not a lot of stuff that I want to blast all over social media, but I can tell them in the course, like, look, this is what happened. This is how we treated it. This is what we did. So, and I'm always in there. If you know me, I'm big on social media. So that's what I love. That private group is, cause I can be real in there and tell people like, hey, here's what it is. Gonna be some bullshit. Don't let it deter you. You got to move forward, and I can help you.
Yeah. It's not all roses. I think it's sold too often to be
Yeah.
this is everything's going to go perfect. Nothing's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Look at my beautiful life here. And
Yes.
everybody thinks
Yep.
everything's
We're
perfect.
having so much
And then,
fun.
yeah, we're having so much
Yeah.
fun. And quite frankly, it is for me. It is so much fun. But I think part of the fun is that it's freaking hard some days, and
Yeah.
you're like, holy crap. And some days you're just like, what am I doing? Like, do I?
Yeah.
But that's what, to me, that's what makes it fun. Is it's always something happening. Like your brain
Yes.
is never just sitting still and not thinking. You're always boom, something's going up, something surprising you, whatever it is.
Yep.
But that's what makes it fun, is the difficulties at times too. So hopefully it's
Yeah.
not all difficulties. Maybe then it's not so much fun, but you got to have some
Yeah.
wins here and there.
No, and that's the thing. When you do rehab these properties and you put a better product out there, things
Yeah.
get better.
Things get better.
It does get easier.
And that's what makes it so cool, right? Because you
Yes.
bought this like freaking disaster. You bought this piece of crap,
Yeah.
the liquor store guy is like,
Yep.
holy cow, what did I get myself into? You probably in the first part of that purchase are like, what the heck did we do?
Yeah.
Why did we do this? And then slowly things start to look better.
Yep.
And okay, we got a good tenant in here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden a couple curveballs come at you, and some tenants like yelling at you or whatever,
Yeah.
swearing at you for some reason, and you're pissed
Sure.
off again. But then in the end, you're like, man, this building, think of where it used to be and look at it
Yeah.
now. And eventually one day you're going to sell that building. You're going to look back and go, man,
Yeah.
what a journey. What a freaking awesome journey in that building. And
100%.
And think of the lives you also, the people that
Yes.
you affected in a positive way too. Like there's people that are super appreciative that this building has been, taken care of, that they're getting taken care of, that it's no longer the way it is, the way it was. I mean, that's super valuable too.
And it is. It's very rewarding. A couple of our buildings, we've had the building inspectors tell us like, hey, we're so glad you bought this building.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've done a great job. I've had the mayor say that.
The neighbors,
the city, the neighbors, everyone just, and that is rewarding because we know we're putting a quality product out there and giving people a good home that they can now be proud of to live in and to bring their friends to and to bring their family to, where before they couldn't. It wasn't something they were proud to live in. So that is very rewarding.
Yeah, love it, man. All right, couple last questions, and then we're going to wrap.
Sure.
All right, so favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People. I say, hands down, if you're not reading that book, you need to be, because that's going to teach you how to deal with people and just how to be a better human being in general. And, this is a very small space, apartments. And if you're an asshole, people will find that out quickly. So that book will just teach you how to listen to people and just how to interact with people better. I couldn't talk more about it. I've loved that. Love that book. Forever. Yeah. I took the course. I've done all that. I really love it.
And it doesn't teach you how to be like weak either. It's not about being weak. Like a lot of people think, if I'm too nice to people, they'll step all over me. No, that's not what it's about. It's not about getting stepped on. It's about how do you influence people, and how do you get them to not step on you while still respecting you, right? Take you serious. That's what the book is all about. I love that book. All right. Last question. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
3 pillars today?
3 pillars.
3 pillars would be our apartment buying. That's our apartments, right? The ones we own. That's our horizontal income. The other pillar is the course, right? And that's doing really, really well. So I'm really excited about that. This is more, I'm super excited about education and online content, which would be wrapped into that. That would be another pillar, the things I do online. And the third thing is I'm a member of GoBundance. You're a member of GoBundance. And I'm an ambassador for GoBundance. So as people come into GoBundance, new members, I'm one of the people that screens them, that has to talk to them, and I get paid to do that. which is what I love. I love being able to talk to new people because it's quality over quantity. GoBundance is big on putting quality people in and not just anybody. So I love playing a role on that. And I love making sure that the right people are getting into this group.
Love it. Love it. Well, again, man, this has been a lot of fun, Grant. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and it's always fun talking with you. I love the energy, and I love the I guess the no BS kind of attitude that you've got. Like you're going to tell people the way it is, whether they like it or not. And I love that about you.
Thanks.
So, man, I really appreciate it, and you have a fantastic rest of the day. Oh, sorry.
Thanks,
wait 1 second. 1 second. I just about cut you short here. Tell our listeners how they can reach out to you.
Perfect. I appreciate that. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at Grant Warrington. And that's it. There's no other accounts. It's at Grant Warrington. You can DM me. You can comment. I'm very active on there, and shoot me a message. I will respond.
Cool. All right, man. We'll put that in the show notes. Appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.